To start, it is crucial to acknowledge the expected impacts of climate change at different scales and with different shapes, but certainly with disproportionate weight on developing nations and on the more vulnerable and marginalized groups. For instance, recent estimates predict that climate change could push in 10 years an estimated 140 million people into extreme poverty, and by 2050, the sub-Saharan African food production chain could be significantly impacted, resulting in the potential forced displacement of up to 19 million people that will have no other alternative than migrate to better places through the Mediterranean, pushing the macro context of this already fragile area into its limits of providing water and food, and creating a cultural and socioeconomic situation difficult to predict and to manage. Faced with this situation, there is an urgent need to explore how different groups perceive and react to climate change and the potential for cross-cultural and transnational solidarity to resolve this global struggle. From a metaphoric point of view, the struggle against climate change could be seen as a game where the playing field is Earth and the players are societies versus the natural parameters. However, unlike most games, climate change is a game that we cannot win in the traditional sense. But we should only work to stabilize the climate and prevent dangerous levels of global warming. We must understand that we are facing an infinite game that will never be fully solved, and that there will always be new challenges and new risks to address. The problem is that humanity is playing with finite resources and with limited knowledge. We do not know all the parameters that govern the climate system, and thus it's hard to predict the future behavior of the climate. Additionally, we do not have equal resources or abilities as for natural parameters, making it difficult for us as players to compete. While natural parameters are playing as one consolidated system, we are splitting our efforts into subsystems and small groups. Consequently, our changes pass only through adopting a long-term perspective, cooperate and collaborate, and play as infinite consolidated players. This means having a sense of purpose and a just cause that is bigger than oneself or any single group. This just cause is the preservation of the planet for future generations. Therewith, our leaders must stop thinking about who wins, because this means there will be always losers, and who is the best, because this means there will be worst. And they should start thinking to build strong and healthy cooperating societies and leave their groups in better shapes than they found them, innovate and act instead of reacting, and have the ethical courage to afford the political short-term price for a better distant future. One way to achieve a better future for all is through the adoption of the SDGs, which were created to address some of the world's most pressing issues, including poverty, inequality, and climate change. However, despite the good intentions behind the SDGs, they are not always effective in achieving ground objectives. And one reason behind this is that the world is a mixture of different ethnicities, cultures, and beliefs, and actions must be resilient to these differences. The application of measures must consider the unique circumstances of the different cultures, communities, and regions. Additionally, these measures must be co-created and tailored according to local ground priorities of the most vulnerable population and take lessons from the local knowledge. And by focusing on the needs of the people, by working together to address the root causes of poverty, inequality, and climate change, we can create a more sustainable and equitable future for all. In fact, most societies know their own social and cultural layers, which make them apparently very different from others, but they hardly perceive that behind these layers there is a common core that they share with all other groups. And I believe faith has a responsibility towards displaying the common things which are our common values as sisters and brothers in humanity, and our spiritual adherence to our national heritage. It is important to stress the observed phenomenon of cross-cultural and transnational sympathy during times of joy and disasters. This phenomenon applies to the sociological principle of David and Goliath, where groups that see themselves as disadvantaged, which currently is our case of humanity in this infinite game against climate change, this David group are likely most psychologically prepared to accept personally and collectively the power differences to approve reform and positive change within their group and grasp its repercussions, and consequently endorse stronger inherent rules of engagement and motivation to take actions of solidarity. In conclusion, the media, governments, and private sector can leverage this emotional connection to the cause of climate change to inspire the public to act. This could be done by highlighting the importance of the issue and how it affects people and communities, by providing inspiring stories and examples of how people are acting, and by providing clear and concrete steps of how individuals and organizations can take action to address the issue. For example, we can bring together education and citizen science with faith-based initiatives, stakeholders, and policymakers to implement a time-consuming and action-oriented culture that enhances the spiritual values of nature as heritage and encourages the presentation of local examples and experiences. Without this, we will never overcome the conflicts of interest that impede any mitigation or adaptation strategy. Finally, the spirit of belonging to a superior cause, such as the preservation of our planet for future generations, is essential to drive meaningful and sustained change. And this is the time to take responsibility for our actions and make a difference, work together across wholly cultural and national, across boundaries to ensure a more sustainable and equitable future for all. Thank you.